hello, good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Shankly Gates podcast. I'm David Brindle, joined by two of the stalwarts of the podcast tonight, Dan Clubb, Kieran Grayson. How are we both, gentlemen?
Yeah, all good, mate.
Yeah, can't complain, mate. All good.
Excellent stuff. There's not much to complain about being a Red at the moment, is there? Let's face it. We've got a jam-packed show again. We'll touch on Nottingham Forest a little bit. I know it's a couple of days ago now, but we'll touch on that game, and we'll also look ahead to the Manchester City game in the semi-final, what we're going to expect from that, and also the fiasco with the travel situation of getting down to Wembley on Easter weekend. We'll also discuss the Trent Alexander-Arnold injury. I say that sort of inverted commas because we're all a bit suspicious about that alleged injury, and also the international break with players going away and stuff. And I know Salah, is it Salah against Mane in this international break? Am I right in saying whoever wins goes through to the World Cup? So that'll be interesting, especially after AFCON. We're also going to have a little discussion maybe around any transfer rumours potentially and Salah's new contract, and we'll finish up with who is Liverpool's most important player. It's a very, very difficult question, and it was one that come to me a little bit earlier on today, and I think it might make for a decent discussion between the three of us. So if you do have any ideas of who you think Liverpool's most important player is, stick it in the comments, and we'll get to it towards the end of the show. But first things first, let's discuss that game against Nottingham Forest. Obviously, Liverpool come through 1-0 winners and advanced to the semi-final of the FA Cup. Kieran, first of all, what did you make of the game as a whole? What were your general reactions to the result?
Yeah, it was exactly what I was expecting, as you've seen from previous rounds, especially when Forest played Arsenal, Leicester. They give them more than a game. Actually, they battered both of them. So you knew there were absolutely going to be no mugs going there. Obviously, the history we had with them in the 80s as well was going to obviously make it for a great game. And yeah, to be honest, it was played a wonderful tempo, a proper old-fashioned cup tie, if you pardon the cliche. And we did what we had to do. We had to stick in there. I thought overall we were fine, to be honest. Another case of a team trying to press us, but not really looking dangerous. Now obviously if they scored a chance just before we scored, who knows? But they didn't, and all we needed was that one chance, and that magic man Jota again just crops up time and time again. Honestly, we talk about it every week, but another important goal for the Reds. Just, time and time again, like I say, fantastic. We go through, another clean sheet. I think that's quite a few in a row now, off across all comps. So, wonderful stuff. And the quadruple is still on, boys.
It's still on, and we've been banging that drum for a long, long time, by the way. We've been banging it since like October, November, I think, something like that. It's 5 consecutive away games without conceding a goal. I can't think, after I've looked at the fixtures, whether we've conceded in homes and all.
Inter
Milan just came to mind. That's about it.
Yeah, so that will have cut that run. Yeah. So it's 5 consecutive aways, and obviously we've been to the Giuseppe Meazza or the San Siro, depending on who's playing there, and Arsenal as well. To be fair, that's not too bad places. But Dan, just on Forest, what did you make of it yourself?
Honestly, that was one of our worst performances for a long time, I thought. I think a lot of Kieran's right in what he says, and a lot of credit should go to Forest for the way they performed. And they didn't make life easy for us. We never settled. They harassed us. The atmosphere spurred them on, the extra 10, 15%, and they deserve a hell of a lot of credit on the pitch, not so much off it. But for me, it was a kind of, I think, 7 changes, wasn't it? So it's difficult to expect us to be at our fluid best. And we definitely weren't. But we're not going to sort of go through the performance in too much detail. It's probably a good job because some of the individual performances were absolutely wretched, I thought. And I can laugh about it now because we get the result and that's all that really matters and we move on. But to me, it looked like a few of them players needed this break. Diogo Jota, as brilliant as he is, and continues to be in front of goal, his all-round play was diabolical at times, quite frankly. And I'm not really one to... I can only sort of laugh about it and call it out because we win the game and no one cares. So it's almost quite funny how poor we were at times. But yeah, for me, that was not one to live long in the memory banks. Get the result and move on and get out of there.
Yeah, you're spot on. It wasn't exactly the most highlight reelish game of football you'll ever see. You won't see a lot of highlights from it. And yeah, it was. I mean, even when we scored, it looked offside first of all, didn't it? And I was sort of like, oh no, it's going to get ruled out. This is going to extra time. And then the other angle's completely different. The other angle, he looks well on. And you're right as well about the fans, obviously singing about Hillsborough and things like that after the whole putting the 97 seats out.
Yeah,
like,
sat in a stadium with 97 seats cordoned off, singing about that. It just goes to show, doesn't it? It's just
it's football fans.
Yeah, the one that got me was "Where's Your Famous Atmosphere," singing that to away fans.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
That doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
But that's their big day out. They're now a small club. They used to be a big club. They're now a small club, and that's the way football fans are. You can always tell a small club by the chants.
Yeah, it's a shame though, isn't it? Because the club had done themselves a lot of favours in the build-up to the game, and I had a lot of I had respect for them anyway, but sort of greater respect, and then they go and ruin it all by that, in my opinion. It's a shame,
just idiotic, and you can't even say it was a minority because it was the majority. You could hear it throughout the ground. You could hear all sorts. So
and on that, just to say, when earlier on this season we had a discussion on here about the Chelsea song, and Liverpool had been condemned for using it, and we discussed it and all agreed that it was wrong. And I haven't heard it, and I go to a lot of games, not all games, but I go to a lot of games. I haven't heard it since. The silence about what we heard on the weekend is deafening, absolutely deafening. Like, we should be having the same conversations on social media, in the media about it, but we don't. It's just like people just turn the blind eye to it constantly. You remember Gary Lineker, when Leicester fans were singing it earlier this year, said, "Oh, I didn't hear that." It's just frustrating now for me because, like I say, a big thing was made of the Chelsea situation, and rightly so. And we discussed it. The club said stop doing it, and it stopped. This other stuff that's been going on for years is week in, week out. No one says a word apart from us. It's bizarre.
That was my point about it, because that song we sang at Chelsea, I said this at the start of the season, I didn't realise the connotations behind it, and I accepted it that it was wrong, and we stopped singing it. Chelsea away this season, I never heard it get sung. The Carabao Cup final, never heard it get sung.
No, I didn't know. Right.
So Liverpool fans have gone, okay, job done. And you know what? Okay, there might be isolated incidents away from the ground that I haven't seen where it's been sung by idiots. Fair enough. But like you say, not one person has mentioned, outside of Liverpool Football Club and the supporters, not one person has mentioned the fact that Nottingham Forest was singing about Hillsborough, Leicester fans were singing about poverty in Hillsborough. You know, it's just left to, oh, it's all right, it's only Liverpool. It's like, no, 97 people died. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one should ever go to a football game and not come home. But that's okay to sing about because it's Liverpool, apparently.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
That's how it feels. That's how it feels, though, isn't it?
Well, perception is reality. We perceive to be no one talking about it, and that's the reality about it.
But it was Billy Gilmore, wasn't it? Norwich.
Yeah, Norwich.
Yeah,
it wasn't even Chelsea.
That song, because that's what sparked it, and then the conversation was had. It was everywhere, and Liverpool, rightly so, like I say, were told to stop doing it by the football club, and it, like I say, it pretty much has stopped. This is week in, week out, and we make a lot of noise about it, but it doesn't ever seem to go anywhere. It's just I can't get it. I just can't get it. I can't work out why it's happening.
I don't understand it myself. I really do not understand it myself. But you know, hopefully one day it will be sorted out. Hopefully someone will bring it up. Let's see. Right, let's move on then to obviously City in the semi-final. We avoided them in the Champions League, Dan. Obviously, me and you were on the live stream in the week, and you were saying the perfect draw to get Benfica and avoid City and Chelsea. Can't get away from them forever. We are kind of, to an extent, joined at the hip as the two best teams, easily in England, maybe in Europe. How did you feel about obviously getting Manchester City and having to play them twice in quick succession with the FA Cup semi-final?
Yeah, I think in terms of the twice in quick succession, that's difficult, obviously, because to beat them once is challenging enough. We know that from this sort of on-off rivalry down the last few years now. But to beat them twice in quick succession is going to be really difficult. But that's obviously what we're going to have to do pretty much if we're going to go all the way in all competitions. I have to say, I was made up to avoid them in the Champions League, as you know, just because of the strength of them. And they're the only team really left in that competition that match us in most departments. But in terms of the FA Cup, I was actually quite pleased to get them in the semi-final and the final. Just because I feel like, I don't know, in a warped way, we've got a better chance of beating them in the semi-final. I think I'd rather that, and I think we've obviously played Chelsea in a final and beat them already. So if that happens again, I'm fine with it. If by some bizarre turn of events Crystal Palace managed to get to the final, then happy days. Whereas the prospect of facing Man City in the final was a properly daunting one. And I've actually still got hope when it comes to the Champions League that City won't make it by another bizarre twister event, because there's 4 possible games there whereby something could happen to City on the route to the final. They could have to get through Chelsea or Real Madrid, which is difficult. But even that Atletico game is a banana skin, because we've all seen what Atletico can do. They're far from Man City's level, but all they've got to do is get ahead in the game, and that's it. They kill it. They kill it stone dead. They could get someone sent off because they're that sort of team as well. So for me, the Champions League did work out perfectly. And in a weird way, the FA Cup worked out perfectly as well.
Yeah, I suppose you're right in a sense. I would not like to have played them in the final, as you say, and get beat there. There was a part of me that wanted them to get Palace, though, because Palace have been a bit of a bogey team for them this season. Obviously, dropping points at Selhurst, getting beat at the Etihad. But then that run's got to come to an end at some point, and it more than likely would have happened in the semi-final. Kieran, what did you make of getting drawn with Man City?
Yeah, I think whenever you play City, it's going to be a tough game anyway. Both teams are going to put the first team out. So to me, I was looking at, I think me and you were discussing, Dave, if we'd have drew Chelsea, they might not have had no fans in the stadium. So I know they probably won't into the final anyway. I know something may get sorted there. They're looking to try and maybe get tickets, but something like that, or getting Palace. But it's City we've got. We know what we're going to expect. High intense game. Both teams are going to be absolutely going for it. It's going to be wonderful for the neutral. That's going to be the semi-final to watch. I know we're going to go on to talk about it, but where it's going to be played, we don't know. Well, it should be, it shouldn't be at Wembley because of all the problems. Because there's no trains going to Euston that weekend. So hopefully there's a bit of common sense, that they do move it. I don't know where they'll move it to. Obviously, Old Trafford's the obvious one, but I know Man United play at home that weekend. So, discussions need to be had there. Well, yeah, back to the game. Whether it's semi-final, final, or the third round, it's going to be a huge game. We'll see how it goes. Big, Wembley, big pitch. So that I do think that comes into it if it is there a big factor in terms of pressing. You've got a lot of ground to cover. Both teams, will attempt to press as they always do, but there's just the size of the pitch. Don't think it'll be you can't press as much. You'll have to just as both teams are clever when they do it. So I'm looking forward to whenever we play them. Hopefully we should be able to get past them. I'm getting more and more confident as the games go on. Just the way the Reds are this season. We're from doubters to believers. You certainly are believing right now, even when we play below par. Certainly against Forest in the first half against Arsenal, we still come out and win the game. So no, I'm looking forward to it, mate. It should be a cracker, and hopefully we get the right side of them.
Yeah, I'm going to come to you, Dan, in a sec about the whole travel fiasco. But Kieran, when you said there about it might be the one for the neutral, I actually think the opposite, because it's two teams that are not scared, but very wary of the quality of the opposition that they're facing. And it might be a little bit tighter and a little bit more tense as opposed to Chelsea against Palace. You kind of expect Chelsea to go and win that. And therefore, Palace have got less pressure on them. They might be a bit more capable of hitting them on the counter-attack and opening up a bit more. And it might be a bit more end-to-end. Obviously, if Chelsea score early, it's pretty much game over. But with our game, I think it's going to be very, very close, very tense. Kind of like what you've seen at Anfield earlier on this season. I know it was 2-2 in the end, but it was very tight early on and scrappy. And then if the goals start coming in, it'll be great. But it's a semi-final. It's massive. And obviously you've also got the Etihad the week before, and what's that going to bring? Dan, let's talk, as Kieran's just mentioned there, about obviously no trains going down, and the whole thing of the semi-final being at Wembley anyway is a joke. We've said it for weeks and weeks and weeks. It should never be at Wembley. The whole point of going to Wembley is for the final.
Yeah.
The first thing I want to ask you is, I mean, it's a silly question because we all know the answer to it is, will it be moved? And if so, where do you think it should be moved? Obviously, Kieran said about Old Trafford in action. Where's the next available sort of ground that you'd see it being moved to?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? No, it won't be moved. Let's be brutally honest about it. Although I have been impressed today with we spoke a minute ago about sort of big entities not getting behind something they probably should. I have been impressed by the noise surrounding how wrong this situation is, particularly obviously in light of the train, because obviously it's just not conducive to travelling down there. Because it's all well and good just saying, "Oh, the rest just drive," but we've experienced the M6 firsthand quite recently, and it's not.
And not on an Easter weekend either, mate.
Exactly,
that was just a standard Sunday in February.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be brutal at the best of times. So adding another, God knows, 20,000 people to that road isn't ideal by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, I don't think it'll get moved. I think it's obviously, but they're still paying for the building of Wembley, aren't they? But I've been impressed. I think the mayor of both Andy Burnham of Liverpool and Manchester, don't know the name, have wrote letters, I believe, to the FA to suggest it should be moved. Obviously, Spirit of Shankly got behind it as well today, which I thought was positive. At least it's sort of the right people making the right noise about it. Like I say, I don't believe it'll take us anywhere because the FA aren't really built that way, are they? Let's be honest about it. In terms of where, Old Trafford obviously would have been the ideal, and it's not very often I'll say that. But in a strange sense, the problem is you need the similar sort of capacity, don't you? Because you still want to get sort of upwards of 65,000 in there, let's say, because you want it to be a showpiece. So you can't really go to Goodison, for instance, with all due respect. Or even Villa Park for that matter, because that's around the 40 mark. It probably doesn't have the clout behind it. Without really looking at sort of the travel arrangements of getting down there, because obviously it's Easter weekend, like you say, would going back to Cardiff be a feasible option? Obviously, they've had finals there on numerous occasions before now. If there was trains going down there, it's a slightly lesser drive as well. It's certainly a more doable drive, avoiding the M6. So Cardiff, or the only other one that possibly springs to mind is St James's, because obviously in terms of size and venue, those two are probably the next best two in my opinion.
Cardiff's a very, very good shout, to be fair. Cardiff would be excellent, and obviously the whole past that Liverpool have got there as well in 2001 and stuff and all that. 2006 wasn't it as well? So that would be nice. It's half a shame that both Liverpool and Man City made the semi-final because one of their grounds would be a viable contender. Certainly,
yeah,
I think, they're both in decent range of 50-odd thousand, aren't they?
I bet you the FA, because obviously they knew what was going to happen with these travel arrangements. When they seen that draw, I bet they were half gutted that we got drawn together for that reason. Because they'd been thinking, if one of them gets Palace, we can at least accommodate then. We can move stuff around. But with us both being in, they've got no chance, have they?
But they knew about that since September.
Since 2019, I've seen.
Is it? All right, okay. So not even earlier than that. So they've obviously just thought, whatever. It doesn't matter. Because let's face it, mate, right? We know what Liverpool supporters are like. We will find a way to Wembley, whether it's by hook or by crook. We will get down there. And I'm assuming most City fans would be the same as well.
Yeah.
They'll make their way down there. So the FA are sort of like, well, you can complain as much as you want, but we know that you're going to sell your allocation and the ground's going to be full. It's just really wrong. Like, the whole situation anyway is wrong. And I get it to an extent that the nice thing about having the semi-final at Wembley is you get more tickets. It's the biggest ground in the country. Both sides will get a bigger capacity at the stadium. For teams like ourselves, anyone with more than, like, say, 40,000 seats, you've got more chance of getting a ticket for the final if you go. Yeah. So I get that. But at the same time, it's like, come on. There's no trains on. Put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just put it somewhere else.
Like you said earlier, I'd forego the extra tickets, and there's a very strong chance that I'd be one of the extras, but I'd almost give that up for going back to the old school, Wembley's final day. Wembley is final day. It's not semi-final day, because like that takes a shine off a little bit. The only way I can see it being a positive is if not even a club the size of Crystal Palace, is if a much smaller club gets to the semi-finals. Their day out at Wembley That's great news, made up for you. But without being almost arrogant, the likes of City, Liverpool, Chelsea, who get there regularly, we don't want to go there for a semi-final as well.
No. And I think it's a tough situation, isn't it? Because where do you go? Where do you go with it and lose them tickets and things like that? As you say, it's difficult. Kieran, let's get your thoughts, mate. What do you make of the whole mess?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what Dan said. I didn't think of Cardiff. That's a great shout. But I think it's all a moot point, really, because it's not going to be moved. We can moan about it as much as we want. It's just not going to happen. But you are right, Dave. You could put it anywhere. You could put it in Russia at the minute, Liverpool, or Ukraine. Sorry, and Liverpool. We'd go. So it honestly doesn't really. It won't matter how many complaints we put in. Yeah, but good to see the two mayors, Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham, getting together. I know they've been working hard, especially with the P&O crisis this week as well. So, at least there's some unity there. But it's just a mess. I didn't know they'd known about it since 2019, so that just makes it more of a joke.
Yeah.
But the way the draw is, we've got each other. They're not going to change it. So, but we are right to complain, and we have to, as fans, for years. It's because it's not just this. It's traveling to Brighton or wherever for a 12:30 kickoff, and that's just us. There's other cases for every club up and down the country. So no, it won't get changed, which is disappointing. But on the flip side, like you say, we're going to get a massive allocation. We're going to fill the end, and we're going to be loud and proud on the day. So yeah, but it'll be at Wembley, and we'll be properly up for it.
The thing that gets me right is that I can't remember exactly when the semi-final started getting played at Wembley. I'm assuming like 2010, 2011. I know we played Everton there in 2012. I think that might have been quite early on. But the fact that we're now 10 years plus on from semi-finals being played at Wembley, and we're still saying that it's wrong, it shouldn't be happening, kind of proves that it's not working and the FA should change it. And obviously it's taken this situation of people. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't get the train anyway, right? Because it's too expensive and I don't like getting the train. So I'd be all right. But there's other people who would have to get the train because it's quicker to get in and out and things like that. They don't drive or they don't get on a coach, don't know what coach to get on, things like that. Fine. But I just think, something could be done. Something could be done about it to sort it out for them. It's important that we look after everyone and not just ourselves and say, I could just go, I don't care. But it's for everyone else that gets down there. And like you say, it's been happening for like 10 years and it's still not tradition. People will never forget semi-finals being at Old Trafford and Villa Park or whatever. It's better. And again, you lose a bit of allocation, but you'd rather go back to the old way of a neutral ground.
Yeah, I think, Dave, Dan made a good point, though, because obviously if you were going to put it to a vote, the so-called smaller clubs would outweigh the bigger clubs in terms of because it's their day out. So even if it went to a vote, it's still going to be there, I think. Yeah,
I think it always will be there. But look, let's see what happens. Because it's a long way off yet, and something might happen, as you say. We've had mayors getting involved, and the whole spin of Shankly and is it 1894 group from City or something like that about together. Let's see what happens. I'm not gonna count me chickens or whatever that saying is. It's gonna be at Wembley. We're gonna have to get down there. You're probably gonna have to leave like 3 days before to make sure you don't get stuck in traffic on the M1. Whatever you do, don't stay in the same lane, Dan. Let's cut into the outside lane.
You think you should move
always. Even if there's a red X, just go through that red X. That's not legal advice. Don't take that as legal advice. Don't get stopped by the police and said, well, he said he can go through it. No, I'm just joking.
No.
Definitely don't do that. Right, let's move on to obviously it's international break. And we heard before the Forest game, Kieran, that Trent Alexander-Arnold is injured. What did you make of that, especially after Kyle Walker was rested from the squad, and obviously following that you've had Reece James as well drop out. Not really too much of an interest to us, but what did you make of the whole Trent situation?
Yeah, I think your inverted commas summed it up, nicely. I think it is a case of injured. Obviously, we'll get in more information as the break goes on, but I think Liverpool have been quite cute here. Hopefully, with it, it's something we've wanted to do in the past. All big managers have done it in the past, and I know obviously you'd have to speak to Trent himself about playing right back for England, but in terms of there's enough cover there. I know there's a few lads who haven't made it, but it's international friendlies. It's Switzerland and the Ivory Coast. I mean,
it's completely pointless.
It's not for ranking points. It's not for anything really. If Trent plays, 1 or 2 games, is that going to make a difference to, if he goes to the World Cup? I think he's going to go to the World Cup anyway. So to me, I think Liverpool have been cute there. If it's only a minor knock, which we hope it is. Or you should be hopefully available for the Watford game when we come back. But hopefully he's not out too long because I don't want to ruin the next segment of it. But for me, to lose a player like that, certainly when you haven't got the backup in that position, it would be a worry. So hopefully you are, the inverted commas, injured. Hopefully that's what it is, and he doesn't miss any Liverpool games.
I don't think he personally will, to be honest. I'm very suspicious about how sort of blasé Klopp was about mentioning it. Like, he wasn't actually asked about. I don't even think he was asked about team news or anything like that. I think he just sort of threw it in there at some stage as like a bombshell. I can't remember. I might be wrong, but he wasn't directly asked about Trent. He just sort of came out with it. Dan, are you along the same lines? And if so, how delighted are you that Trent gets a bit of a break?
Yeah, delighted. I actually I seen it on Twitter when it came at the gym, and my initial response to James Pearce's tweet was along the lines of how convenient. Because I don't know if you've seen Trent's Instagram today, he's sort of back to work already, calling himself the comeback kid. Exactly what he's coming back from, I'm not entirely. I do believe there'll be something. I'm pretty certain we wouldn't fabricate the entire thing. And perhaps some tightness, something along those lines. But in terms of severity, I'm just not convinced. And I'm actually made up because it's something United used to do with Ferguson a lot. And like if one of their star players or any of their players for that matter had even the slightest inclination of an issue, they just don't go. I mean, we've seen Naby Keita. I know Robertson was COVID, so that's slightly different. There's a few sort of important Liverpool players not going away now. And Trent's among them, obviously. And for me, like I say, there probably was something. But with the way he's been treated by England as well in the past, I wouldn't be surprised if he's sort of instigated this conversation and said, listen, my hamstring's not perfect. I don't want to go away and play these 2 friendlies. What can we do about it? And if he has done that, brilliant, because we're going for a quadruple and he'll be delighted by that fact. And he won't want to risk that himself. So, yeah, I'm with you guys. I think perhaps he misses the Watford game, which wouldn't be the end of the world. But with Benfica and Man City sort of coming thick and fast after that, I'd be amazed if he wasn't involved. And what was interesting, just to say, finish on it, is I think the first day of international duty, which was essentially on Monday, The Athletic released an article, like a big sort of Liverpool article. And Trent's injury was downgraded instantly to isn't serious on the first day of international duty. So having initially been sort of saying, it might be a few weeks, looks a little bit worrying, the very first day international duty starts, it's not serious. You're like, okay, they really aren't messing around here. So yeah, I'm very confident that he'll be fine.
Yeah, we're not soft, are we? Jürgen knows what he's doing.
It's about time.
As you say, he's been treated ridiculously for England, and throw him in centre mid and benching him and things like that. Yeah. I understand when people sort of like Jordan Henderson, even Milner when he was playing for England, Joe Gomez, whoever, Chamberlain, if he ever gets a sniff. People who aren't from Liverpool are kind of go, well, all right, you do, but people from Liverpool, we don't really care about the England national team. We're very sort of separatist, if you like, from the country. And I wonder if Trent's a bit like that. I wonder if he thinks, obviously, he can't retire. He could, but it'd cause shockwaves, wouldn't it? You don't want that PR attention. But I wonder if we'll see this a few times throughout his career, and maybe Curtis Jones, if he ever makes it to the England national team, whether we'll see them sort of go, I don't fancy this one. And it is an absolutely pointless international break. I mean, you're playing Switzerland and you're playing Ivory Coast. Like, I think to an extent it's nice to see people like Conor Gallagher get recognised for playing really well, but he's never going to get in the World Cup squad. It's almost like a token gesture for someone who's played all right. Like, yeah, we'll give you an England cap. I know he got in the last squad, but is he going to go to the World Cup? You'd probably need a few injuries maybe. But I was looking as well, like Klopp mentioned it, didn't he, Dan, earlier in his, I think it was before Forest, like Scotland are playing like 6 friendlies over the summer, and England have got 4 games over the summer. The first year that there's no World Cup or Euros and stuff. What do you make of that with like this international break as well, and that's on the horizon?
Oh, it's the amount of international football anyway is crazy. Like it has been for a few years now, but it comes down to the money side of things, and that's all it's for 99% of the time. And from a Liverpool perspective, we all hate international duty. Although I will say this one, I think it's actually come at a really good time for us. As a fan base as well, because I don't know about you, but I was knackered. But also we weren't, although the results were outstanding and we were ruthless and we were just finding ways of winning games, we weren't playing particularly great football. So if we can have a sort of a mini reset and then go full tilt after this break, then that's happy days. But yeah, they get asked to go to the well time and time again, don't they, these players? And particularly the pace of the game now, which is like faster than it's ever been before, especially at a club like Liverpool. So the more our players can back away from international duty, the better. And you mentioned Henderson there. I don't think we're far away from him probably needing to retire from international duty to sort of prolong his club career. I know it's something Milner himself did, and I think I'm right in saying something Jamie Carragher did back in the day, although he was never really sort of a mainstay for England, like you alluded to.
Neither's Henderson, is he, at this stage?
No, true enough. Yeah, and like you alluded to with the Trent situation, it's probably easier for Carragher to go, do you know what? I'm not really that bothered. I'll leave it. Perhaps Henderson is getting towards that sort of stage as well. And Joel Matip, didn't he? I know this is
he did,
not England. He did it for Cameroon, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he was getting problems all the time with his fitness. And he thought, I want to concentrate and play as long as I can for my club. So I'm going to retire. If every single Liverpool player did that, I'd be delighted. But even just a few more would do.
Yeah, and again, you know, the likes of your Andy Robertsons, he's always going to want to represent Scotland, isn't he?
Captain, isn't he? Well,
exactly,
yeah.
And he loves his country. Like that's. I know there's people who are probably a bit patriotic about England, but I don't think as a nation we're very patriotic anyway. I'm certainly not. But like I look at the likes of the Americans who just love their country, and I half wish we had that a little bit, but not with England because it's boring. Kieran, before I ask you and how you sort of go about international football, I actually came up with a great idea. Well, I think it's a great idea anyway, and how to fix all these stupid fixtures, right? You get rid of nations, so you don't have like England and Scotland and Wales. What you have is you have the league, so you have the Premier League, and they pick their best 25 players to go up against Serie A and the Bundesliga and all that. And they are the international teams, and you have a tournament at the end of the season, maybe every 2 years. Let's not go mental. But there'll be no international games throughout the season. You just scrap all that. Let's get rid of all that. That is the World Cup. Now, it's the Premier League against the Bundesliga. Every league in the world, if you want. I mean, obviously not like, you know, these nonsense ones in like North Korea or whatever who just pointless having them in. But that is how I would fix international football. So, like, say Klopp wins Manager of the Year, right, in the Premier League. He manages the Premier League 11, if you like, for the tournament, and he picks the 25 best players. And I'm already thinking that if it was Klopp who got that job, he would not pick any Liverpool players. He'd pick every Man City player just to give himself an advantage. I've just realised a bit of a flaw in that. But no, go on, Kieran. In terms of international football, what would you do to change it?
I mean, even if he did that, he'd still win it because City's like, you know, the best of the rest
he'd
anyway.
Look good and we'd get a rest. So
yeah,
it's a win-win.
No, I don't think I'm on board with that idea, mate. You know, as much as we don't like international football, I do enjoy the World Cup. I do think,
yeah,
you know, every 4 years, just, you know, you prepare yourself for, you know, a summer of, well, a bloody winter of football this year. But yeah, so
maybe you rotate then. Maybe you'd have a World Cup every 4 years, and we'll scrap the Euros and we'll scrap the Nations League, and we'll just have that
they want the World Cup every 2 years, don't they? So
yeah, that's not going to happen, is it?
I don't know. I agree. There's too much international football. I didn't think the Nations League was a bad idea myself, where you sort of, well, that was more looking at the team, sort of the lower ranked teams, I think, playing against each other, so they were having, you know, decent games. I don't think the top countries are too bothered, because then you have a finals and all that, and no one's really bothered about it. So, I don't know where to go about it, because you do need international football, because, like I said, the World Cup's a great watch. I love watching it, but then we need to find sort of a medium in between to get rid of these friendlies. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure I'm on your wavelength, Dave, with that idea, but again, I can't come up with one on my spot. So, to me, I'm not really that bothered. Obviously, you say Scotland have got some friendlies in the summer. Obviously, that would replace a World Cup. But then
I think there might be Nations Leagues as well.
Is it Nations League games? Okay.
I think they've got Nations League games, and then they've got the playoff against Ukraine if that goes ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're speaking about it now. Obviously, there's a couple of countries who, are involved in this international break. That important game, World Cup qualifiers, and obviously just Salah versus Mane for the right to go to the World Cup next year. I think over 2 legs. So from a Liverpool point of view, great if both are still with us. Great. That means one of them's not getting there. Well, one of them is, but one of them definitely won't be. So,
who would you rather not make it?
Probably Salah. I think that's probably not to make it. Yeah, just I'd love them both not to make it, but I think one is. So
you've got to. Yeah, one of them's got
Salah not to make
it. Quite literally, yeah.
I think probably Senegal have a better chance. Obviously, it depends what group you get. I think Senegal have a better chance of going through anyway than Egypt. But yeah, from a Liverpool point of view, if it's Egypt that get knocked out, I won't be too disappointed.
Yeah, Dan, obviously that goes against what we've just said about international football. That's a massive game for both Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane. We've seen how important the AFCON was to them as well. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that upcoming game over the international break? And as I say, are you on the same wavelength as Kieran that you'd rather see Salah miss out?
No, I'm actually the opposite. I'd rather see Salah win.
Because he lost AFCON.
Because he lost AFCON, yeah.
Okay.
And from a sort of psychological point of view, we kind of had the upset Salah come back and the buzzing Mane come back. It'd be nice to switch that. And then they're both happy about something and they're both angry about something. So we can all sort of blend into one quadruple winning mess by the end of the season. But yeah, no, obviously that's huge game. I actually think Senegal are the better side, man for man. I think there's not much doubt in that. Egypt were very resilient, weren't they, in AFCON? I mean, they played 120 minutes a game, essentially. They may as well have shook hands at the start and said penalties and then crack on from there, because that's how they seemed to get to the final. Obviously, they lost the final on penalties in the end. So, yeah, I fancy Senegal in terms of quality. But they're the 2 international games I'll probably watch most, because obviously there's major intrigue from a Liverpool perspective on them. But yeah, so obviously, like I said, would rather Salah got through, won that. There's obviously the factor of Salah. We're not entirely sure if he'll still be with us next season. So if he does have to go to a World Cup midway through the season, it might not even impact us, which would be another mini boost, wouldn't it? So yeah, for me, I'd rather Salah edged it. And yeah, like Kieran touched upon, just to finish, like the main issue we have is international friendlies, isn't it? I'm not a huge fan of the Nations League. I think throwing more competitive fixtures at these players isn't ideal. But it is what it is. But yeah, it's the friendlies that we can simply do without them. Like you almost touched on it a minute ago, you're saying about your Conor Gallagher's, and yeah, I think that Tariq Mitchell's been turned up. Those sort of players, giving them exposure to this sort of thing is probably perfect, because not only do they get that international call up and it's like a nice experience for them, 9 times out of 10, they're not playing for clubs that are playing in Europe. So their workload is already a lot less. So if you're picking players from your Palaces, your Evertons, if you want to mention them, and your Brightons, etc., those players have played a lot less games anyway. It'd be nice if they could put something in place whereby mid-season you can't pick players that have played X amount of games. You know what I mean? In this window in particular, if somebody's played 40-plus games, which is a lot by now, you can't pick them. Whereas your players that you kind of Gallagher's, well, they've only played sort of mid-20s by this stage, because there's no Champions League or Europa League. So if there was that sort of thought process, I don't think I'd mind so much. Instead, it's just he's fit, wheel him out. Like Jordan Henderson, I seen a stat the other day, has made the most appearances for Liverpool this season. He's our leading appearance maker, which is quite surprising. And he's offered international duties. He's played 2 friendlies for England. And we know, as Liverpool fans, how often he breaks down. So it's annoying.
I like that idea of limiting players, and maybe it should be like, I don't know how familiar you are with baseball, but they've just brought a rule in that you can't, there's certain players you basically relegate them to your sort of reserve team, if you like. It's not really the same thing. It's sort of in football terms. And they've brought in a limit on how many times you can drop them down and bring them back up. Maybe if there's a limit on how many games they can play.
Yeah.
Maybe if there's like, 10, 12 international games, you can only have people playing 4 or 5, something like that. Because I know obviously you'll have, Southgate will probably have conversations with managers who will say, for example, Harry Maguire, he might have spoke to Ralph Rangnick and said, Ralph Rangnick might have said that he can only play 45 minutes in both games.
Yeah.
Like he's not playing anymore.
That used to happen a lot, didn't it?
Yeah.
It used to happen a lot, that.
Yeah, and that probably still does sort of behind the scenes, which you never really truly find out about, I suppose. It never really comes to light. But with the friendlies, I don't think anyone should play 90 minutes in a friendly, to be honest with you. I think it's daft. But certainly something needs to change about international football. But unfortunately, it looks like it's going to go the other way, and there's going to be more games as opposed to player welfare and having less games. We've touched on Salah Mane, so we won't go into that too much detail. Let's move on now to the final sort of topic. This is something that came to me earlier on today, and I want you to pick out who you think is the most important player in this Liverpool team. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to pinpoint because there's so many important cogs. You could make an argument for probably 6 or 7 players, to be fair, who's the most important. But you've got to pick one, and we need to hear your reason why you've picked one. Would anybody like to go first, or would you like me to go first and take the hit? Because I never go first, to be fair.
Go on, Dave.
It might be fair if I go first. I thought about this recently, and do you know what? It probably would change a lot in terms of like, if you ask me again in sort of maybe 3 months' time at the end of the season, it might be somebody else. But I think it's probably Alisson for me. Because he's, if you look back at this season and the amount of saves that he's made where the game has sort of been in the balance, or even if we've only been 1-0 up, or even to an extent 2-0 up, and or leading by 2 goals, and he's snuffed out an opportunity for the team to sort of get their way back in. He makes so many important saves. Look at Arsenal, for example, the other week. He makes that save from Ødegaard from where he has no right to get that ball, and then we go and score after it. The amount of times that happens, and it doesn't get swept under the rug, because I think we all appreciate Alisson Becker. We all understand that he's the best goalkeeper on the planet. For me, it's not even a question. And the fact that he gets in the Brazil team regularly and is the number 1 proves that. Because Ederson's probably maybe next best. Neuer's probably past it a bit now. De Gea's all right, but he's not Alisson. So I just think Alisson Becker, for everything he does, all the saves he makes, his distribution's all right. I know he's got a little mistake in him where he goes a bit crazy and tries to dribble past people and stuff, and that happens. He's a goalkeeper, but just everything about him, he's just got, like, he commands his box. He can punch if he needs to. He'll hold on to the ball if he needs to. He's very clever about where he parries the ball and things like that. It's all those little things. He's also a fantastic human being as well. I mean, look how he behaved when Kelleher got the nod to start at the Carabao Cup. He was just made up for him. And I think he said something to Klopp, didn't he, about can we get him on the Champions Wall of goalkeepers now because he's won won a trophy. So you've also got that side of him. But I honestly just think, like, and as I say, you could put an argument, and I'm sure you two will. You want it? I don't know who you're going to say, because we haven't spoke about it. This is the fun bit about it. You could genuinely make an argument for 6 or 7, in my opinion. There's loads of good players in this team who are so important. But for me, sometimes those players who maybe are outfield players get beaten or make mistakes. And Alisson makes mistakes, but he's always there to sort of dig them out and save their backside from mistakes. And I just think without him, you look at like Karius, Mignolet, we would not have won the Premier League without Alisson. We would not have got in the Champions League last season without Alisson's header. There's so many important things that he does that aren't as big as a goal that gets us into the positions we need to be to win trophies. Nice to go first for once, actually. That made a nice change. The floor is yours, gentlemen. Whoever wants to go next is free to take it.
Go on, Dom.
Virgil van Dijk. It's Virgil van Dijk. Simply because not only is his quality exceptional, because I could spend minutes eulogising about all his attributes and how good he is as a defender, and he's simply the best in the world. And not a lot's been made of how he's now the best in the world once again, having come back from 8-9 months out with a cruciate knee ligament injury. Took him a little while to get going again this season, but was still brilliant and is now ridiculous, like a freak again. Like, he's just silly. But for me, it's more the fact that he makes everyone around him better. And if you can make all the players you're playing with go up levels, you can't buy that trait. You simply cannot buy that. Like, we've seen how good Joel Matip's a very good footballer anyway. But if you put Matip next to Gomez or Konate, I think there's problems. But you put any of them next to Virgil van Dijk and we're laughing, because he organises everything, absolutely everything. He makes Trent and Robbo's job 10 times easier because he's the leader of that back line as well. Obviously, we've seen last season, I could simply name last season alone as being enough reason as to why he's the most important player in our side. Yeah, I just can't look past him. There's so many others, like you say, Dave. Alisson's a great shout. He's absolutely superb. There's an argument to say he's been our best player this season, without a shadow of a doubt. And we'll probably give some honourable mentions in a minute, but there's so many. But for me, like I say, with everything that's gone on the past 18 months, I just can't look past Van Dijk.
Yeah, it's fair. It's very fair. He'd probably be my next in line. And as you say, mate, 3 months' time, he might be the person that I'd go for as the number one. It's a very fluid, topical thing, and at this moment in time, and based off this season, I do think it's Alisson for me. But very, very fair with Van Dijk. Kieran, you?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably two of my top three, bro. I'm going to go for another one, but I'm going to stick with the defender themes. And again, you can make case for loads, but for I'm going to go Trent Alexander-Arnold. And the reason I'm going to go for it is, obviously, Van Dijk and Alisson, unbelievable players. But I look at the next line. Say if Alisson gets a knock, gets suspended, we've seen Kelleher, can come in, do a job. Van Dijk not there. We even saw last season, wasn't he? Not even there anymore. But Nat Phillips, Ozan Kabak, who came in. You've got, Matip, Gomez, Konate. We spoke about it before. Trent gets injured. If he's, not back for a few weeks, we're not screwed, but it's, I think the level of our play then comes down a considerable notch. So I honestly think our two fullbacks going forward are as important as the front three. Just the way we play and the way they bomb on forward. And obviously, you could with the same argument with Robertson, but we've got Simicast there who's proven he can do a similar job. So for me, what you get from Trent going forward is we just can't replace that. For me, he's superb on the ball. Is defensively this season he's improved for me as well. He's still got lots more improvement to go, for sure. But yeah, for me, I'd go Trent. Not all day long, because without Alisson and Van Dijk, I don't think we'd wouldn't have won a league, wouldn't have won a Champions League. So yeah, they're in my top three, but I'm gonna go Trent just for the fact that we haven't really got someone there to come in if he, gets injured. Again,
another very, very fair shout, because especially this season, that little triangle on the right-hand side of Trent, Salah, Henderson or Elliott or whoever plays in there has been so important to how we attack and break the lines down and the way they move together. So he plays a massive part in that. And he's not even a right back, is he? He just does what he wants. It's like when you have a winger and you just tell them to just play a free roll, or a number 10, just play a free roll. He's a right back and he plays a free roll. He does what he wants on the right-hand side. It's mental. And like you say, you could make an argument for, do you know what? You could probably make an argument for about, you can probably make more than 6 or 7. You can make an argument about 10 or 11, maybe even 12 or 13.
Yeah.
You've got Alisson, we spoke about Van Dijk, we spoke about Trent, we spoke about Robbo, the importance that he's had. Joel Matip's been fantastic, to be fair, and
Very
you can't
underrated.
knock him. Very underrated player. Jordan Henderson's the captain, just makes the team tick. Fabinho, just unbelievable in his role. There's no one better than him. Thiago, I don't think has lost a game this season when he's played. Am I right in saying that? I think he's won every game he's played.
Played against Inter.
So that's gone. Well, domestically he hasn't lost a game
that
yet.
Inter game's throwing records out.
Just getting rid of it. The Van Dijk one as well. Yeah. That's domestically. It's just domestically now. Let's just ignore that.
Salah, we haven't even mentioned Salah.
Well, this is what I was going to say.
Any of the front three.
What I was going to say was, I feel like the front three, and it's hard to say now because you've obviously got Jota and you've got Diaz as well. That's like one entity.
Yeah.
We don't see that as like, oh, Salah. I mean, we all know Mohamed Salah is ridiculously talented, fantastic footballer. And we'll probably talk about his contract very briefly in a minute. But that front three works together as a unit rather than it does individually. They're not so much individual cogs. You look at example for that first goal against Arsenal. Jota gets that much space because of Mane's run inside. And that then confuses Ben White, who had a bit of a stinker for both of their goals, to be fair. He doesn't know where to go. He ends up sort of following him a little bit. I think it's Ben White anyway. And he leaves that gap for Jota. So you can't say like it's all Jota or it's all Mane because it all works together.
The only thing I'd ever say on the front three, and you're right in what you say, particularly at the minute with all the options we've got, it's hard to pinpoint one apart from Salah's numbers being absolutely ludicrous. For a long time, not so much these days, but for a long time, you could have the discussion about Firmino as a single entity, I think, because what he did and what he brought was so different, and he was so important to the way we played, and he was so important to the numbers Mane and Salah got. So he was almost a different conversation in himself because his numbers have never been crazy, never. And they're not going to be. He's not that type of footballer. But what he gave to the side and the way we could play with him as opposed to without him made him, like the three we mentioned, I happen to think are the top three. And then you're probably talking Fabinho, Salah, etc. But for a long time, not much these days, for a long time, Firmino was probably sort of in that top 3-4 conversation for me because what he brought to the side, nobody else could match. Like Kieran said with Trent, we can't replace that. We couldn't, and arguably still can't replace Firmino. I think the past couple of weeks when he came in against Arsenal, we were obviously all there. We were a different side when he started playing.
Yeah.
And I think we all missed him against Inter Milan when Jota couldn't really hold the ball up. So it's almost like absence makes the heart grow fonder, doesn't it? That's the thing with Firmino. We all kind of write him off and think, oh, no, Jota's here now. But then when Firmino plays, you go, oh, actually, you're proper good at what you do. So he's an interesting one, isn't he?
Well, Jota's not quite. I know Jota plays in the same sort of in the middle, but Jota doesn't really does he what Firmino does?
No,
and
role,
Mane's been tried in that role, and if Firmino does that better than anyone else in the world of football, doesn't he? Let's face it. You could also argue about Jota. Jota scored so many good goals this season, been so important in this team, has played lots of football. Kind of surprisingly at the start of the season, obviously first game gets the nod over Firmino, and you're sort of thinking, is this the end of the front three and things like that? Luis Diaz has come in and he's like a house on fire. You know, he's unstoppable. When he gets the ball, he's just frightening. There's so many players you could argue for, but I do think we did get it right with what we've said. Just before we wrap up, let's just have a little sort of update on our thoughts on Salah and his contract, because obviously it's still rumbling on. We've had the whole agents tweeting emojis and things like that, and Klopp saying things and then saying he shouldn't have said nothing because it causes headlines. Honestly, hand on heart, Kieran, is he going to sign a new contract? Should Liverpool break the bank for him? Do you honestly think it's going to happen?
Oh, yeah. I think it does. I mean, I know we mentioned that, important players. He's so important to what we do. Just his presence more than anything. Just show how scared defenders are. And when he plays now, there's 3, 4, 5 players around him. So yeah, so which leaves space for others. But yeah, for me, I think he's going to sign. He loves the place, he loves the club, loves the fans. Hopefully we do get a good deal sorted. Obviously there are the wage structure and how much we're going to pay for him. It needs does need to be decided. But I think they'll come to an agreement. They know what to do, and Sal, like I say, loves the club. No one will want to see him go. But if they do make the decision to go, we're going to get an awful lot of money for him. We know that. But I can't see him going. But I suppose we have said that before. I don't know, like Suarez, Coutinho, etc. No one is bigger than the club. But for me, I think that the love of the club is there, and for me, he signs.
Dan, do you share Kieran's optimism, and do you think it's going to happen? And how much do you think Liverpool will put forward for him in terms of a contract, and could that potentially be an issue with the rest of the squad?
I don't think it'll be an issue with the rest of the squad because I don't envisage Liverpool breaking the bank for him. I honestly just think we are that steadfast in our ways that we won't go over and beyond what we believe to be right and proper, which is probably fair enough. Like, it's quite frustrating, but when you run the football club as we do as a business, there's not much else you can do, unfortunately. And if you were talking sort of astronomical fees that may potentially upset the apple cart and may get other players going, hang on, that's not right, I should be on X, Y, Z, that's a problem in itself. So avoiding those type of problems is ideal. The more it drags on, the more I fear, and you see the agent stuff, and the more I fear it won't get signed. Klopp's obviously very calm about it. Salah himself seems very calm about it. It doesn't seem to be particularly adversely affecting his performances, which is quite frankly all that matters between now and the end of the season. If it gets sorted in May or June or whatever it may be, then happy days. But I think if we get to June and there is no new contract, I think we're in cashing in territory. Personally, I've had this conversation with many people. Some people would keep him and let him go on a free. I just don't see the plausibility or the finances in that whatsoever. I don't see the sense in it. As much as I'd love to have as many years as possible with Mohamed Salah at Liverpool Football Club, you can't let like a £100 million footballer leave for nothing. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Like PSG are doing it now, aren't they? Essentially with Kylian Mbappe, and I'm looking at that going, that's absolutely insane. That's absolutely. We don't want to be in that situation in a year's time. That's the last thing we want, especially the way we run. It's different for PSG because they're funded by a Gulf state. It doesn't matter to them money, but we don't operate like that. And you give Jurgen Klopp an extra 100 million on top of this transfer budget we're going to have. Who else would you want to spend that money? I wouldn't want to give it to any other manager, not in the world football. So I'd back Klopp to get it right every single time. And as much as I love Salah and Kieran's right in everything he says, the man is a genius with a football at his feet. It comes back to that old adage, doesn't it? No one's bigger than the club. And if he does want to go, and it is purely down to money, then so be it. I'd love him to turn around tomorrow and sign a new deal, as long as it was sort of on par with what makes sense from a club perspective. But I have my fears now that won't happen. I really do. For ages, I was very confident. He loves us, we love him, etc., etc. It'll get sorted. But now, I don't know. I've got my concerns. I've got my concerns up until a point, but at the same time, I'm actually starting to back the club because, like I say, I wouldn't want us just to go, oh yeah, you write down a number and we'll sign it. That's not right. That doesn't make sense. That's not how the world works.
Absolutely not. And certainly not the way we run football. Our football club, that's not what we do. We are approaching sort of like Gini Wijnaldum, Emre Can territory, where it's like contracts are run out, will they, won't they sign you? But the only difference is this is Mohamed Salah. He's world class. He's arguably the best player in the world at the moment. Emre Can was crap, and Gini Wijnaldum was all right. There's a difference, isn't he, between
not only that, the money
two.
We're talking about, the money.
Well, exactly.
If you'd have sold Emre Can, you might have got 20 million.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
the same for Wijnaldum, probably.
Yeah.
Whereas we're talking about, like I say, that
Even with a
100
year
million
left,
mark.
Easy three figures, yeah.
You're
Easy.
still going to get nearly 100 million for him, aren't you? Probably
Yeah.
even in this window. So it's different ballpark altogether.
You just don't want it to get to January next year, and then he can sign for anyone on a free. Like that's what you've got to avoid.
I agree. I agree with Danny. Signs or he goes in the summer window.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be.
And it's going to be a big summer as well because you've got Mane's contract running out, Firmino's contract running out, Chamberlain, Keita, who's had a real resurgence in the past couple of weeks, maybe even months. His contract's running out. There's a lot to do in the summer, but Salah is still number one. I tell you what, though, I would much rather, instead of Salah signing a new contract, give me a Jurgen Klopp contract extension all day long.
100%.
Yeah,
if I had the choice and he said you can only have one, no brainer. Give me Jurgen for 4 more years. That'll do me.
100%.
Let's see how it happens. That's going to be something we need to talk about next season. Probably Klopp's last potential year in charge of Liverpool. Gives me shivers just thinking about him leaving. Horrible way to end the podcast. I do apologise.
Someone say quadruple quick. Someone say quadruple.
Yeah, someone say quadruples on. We're going to play every available fixture. That's the new one. Instead of saying quadruple, now people are saying we're going to play every available fixture to us, just in case we don't win anything. We're winning everything. Let's just get it out there. We've been saying it for months. Everyone's jumped on the bandwagon now. 4 trophies. We've been saying it since October,
we definitely
November.
said it first.
We started it.
Yeah.
We put that train in motion.
You'll have the podcast somewhere, won't you? Be on somewhere.
I will have to go back and see where we first mentioned the quadruple.
You'll be able to work it out. We can do one a week. It's not loads of podcasts.
It's not loads of podcasts.
You know what I mean? So,
and I'll just flick through the Facebook page. They'll all be on there.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I will figure that out. That's my homework for the week for next week. I'll figure that out.
Find out who and when.
Who and when. It was definitely me and you were on it, Dan. I'm Kieran. I feel like
sure
you were there. As well.
Yeah, I think
I
think it was Dan.
It might have been Dan. Yeah, it might have been you, mate. Let's have a look.
It's all on you, this.
I'll go back and find it. That'll be my job for the week. We will be back next week at some point to look ahead to Watford and Benfica and whatever's got coming up. I've lost track of all the games Liverpool have got because we are just so good. But thank you for watching and watching clips wherever you may watch them, whether it's on Facebook or on Liverpool World, wherever you may see them. Thank you. Gentlemen, have a pleasant evening. I am going to sit with the baby now and hopefully she's asleep. Fingers crossed. We'll see. But I will catch you both soon. Enjoy the rest of your international break and enjoy watching a miserable game of football between England and Switzerland. I'm sure you'll absolutely love it. And obviously Ivory Coast as well. Thank you.